So I'm going to give a lecture about the thing that I find as an editor, the thing that ends up coming up as the biggest problem all the time with all the stories that we work on, that I've worked on over the years. And at One Story, we never publish an author more than once. So we've now published, I think we're working on our 130th issue. And I'd say for the majority of the issues, this problem has arisen and we've had to deal with it in one way or another. Excuse me. So one of the most frequent questions readers ask after finishing a story is, how did they do that? They've been led somewhere by the writer, kidnapped, shall we say, and dropped in a foreign country. The reader was so entranced with the countryside, they weren't paying attention to the road signs, and they've sort of ended up somewhere, and they don't know how they got there, but it's beautiful. So the reader is sort of, you know, this I think is the best kind of short story, written by the best kind of writer. You believe the ending, it feels true, and you feel as if you've been sort of magically transported somewhere. What I'm going to try to reveal in today's talk is how writers execute this particular magic trick. It's almost always about the structure. By that I mean the patterns that are created within a short story. So I'm going to start by reading a very, very brief section of an Amy Hempel story. This is Today Will Be a Quiet Day. Amy Hempel is one of my favorite writers, so this is very, very short. And all you need to know is this is a father who's driving over the Golden Gate Bridge and he's stuck in traffic with his two kids, a boy and a girl. "Don't the two of you know any jokes? I haven't laughed all day," the father said. "Did I tell you the guillotine joke?" the girl said. "He hasn't laughed all day, so you must have," her brother said. The girl gave her brother a look you could iron clothes with. Then her gaze dropped down. "Uh-oh," she said, "Johnny's out of jail." Her brother zipped his pants back up. He said, "Tell the joke." "Two Frenchmen and a Belgian were about to be beheaded," the girl began. "The first Frenchman was led to the block and blindfolded. The executioner let the blade go, but it stopped a quarter inch above the Frenchman's neck. So he was allowed to go free and ran off shouting, "C'est un miracle! C'est un miracle!" "It's a miracle," the father said. Then the second Frenchman was led to the block, and the same thing. The blade stopped just before cutting off his head. So he got to go free and ran off shouting, "C'est un miracle." Finally, the Belgian was led to the block, but before they could blindfold him, he looked up, pointed to the top of the guillotine, and cried, "Voilà la difficulté!" She doubled over. "Maybe I would be wetting my pants if I knew what that meant," the boy said. "You can't explain after the punchline," the girl said, "and have it still be funny. That's the problem," said the father. So the reason why I read this is that I often tell my students, if you can tell a joke, you can write a story. And the reason for that is that all jokes have a very classic structure to them. And I'd asked for some pens, which is really exciting. I feel like very back in the classroom here. I'm going to write a few things down on the board. So oftentimes, jokes have a three-part structure, like the one that I just read. Two Frenchmen and a Belgian, are being executed. Okay, and oftentimes you'll see this like a priest, a rabbi, and a minister, and something happens 3 times. The reason for that is the first time something happens, it sets the scene. So I call it the setup. The first thing that happens is the setup. Okay, the second thing that happens when the second Frenchman gets up and the same exact thing happens, I call this the build-up. What it does is it sets a pattern. Not only has something happened once, but it's happened a second time the exact same way. So I call this the build-up. Then the third part happens. The Belgian arrives. And when he says, "Voilà la difficulté," and sort of, sets his own doom, he breaks the pattern. Okay, so I call this the punchline. Right, the punchline. It breaks a pattern, and it's the breaking of that pattern that actually makes the joke. Right? We'll see this over and over and over again. You see 3 guys walk into a bar, and it's always the same thing happens the first 2 times, and then something crazy happens the 3rd time, almost always with the rabbi. So what I'm going to do is sort of take this initial structure and then broaden it a little bit and then broaden it a little bit more, sort of slowly lead you through sort of 3 different stages. So once you figure out what the structure of a story will be, you can fill it out. You sort of make the skeleton, and then you can create the rest of the body of the piece. There are no rules. Every story has a different structure, but each of them usually contains 5 steps, and I'm going to write those 5 steps down. They're basically just a little bit broadening this first 1, 2, 3 build up, set up, build up, punchline. So, already wasting paper, but sure, we'll let that. All right, set up, build up, punchline. I'm just going to write these 3 down. It's basically 5 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first step is the same as the joke, right? The setup. The second is the first event where the conflict is presented, and usually what I call this is the precipitating event. I hope I'm spelling this correctly. I'm really bad at spelling on boards. Precipitating event. So basically the first time something happens. The third is escalation, which is the same as that second, in the joke, the build-up. The fourth is the climax, where that original situation that was presented and the conflict sort of come together. And then the final is the resolution. So at the resolution, the result is presented, and we realize that something has changed in this story. So I'm going to start with a very sort of starting with that joke, I'm going to sort of take this in another direction, and I hope this is entertaining. Should take a little bit more than 5 minutes. But one of my favorite books to use is The Cat in the Hat. Now some of you might not have heard this story for a long time, but I think it's a classic short story. It's a classic children's book, and there's a reason why it works. And I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to break down how this follows this pattern.